Everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CL 650.
And we're back. This is Experts on Call on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton. Thanks for joining us today. We're talking about insurance. And joining us in the studio from Intact Insurance, we have Patrick Magnuson. Also, Carmen Monroy is here. And our broker, Andrew Tablotny of Laguerre Pelling Insurance in Richmond. So we're doing a little bit of a Auto Insurance 101 today. And we've covered some of the basics about vehicle insurance. And the new My Auto program, which is a program available through Intact Insurance. And of course, if you have any questions about it, intact.ca is the website to visit. But now we're just going to switch gears for a moment, and we're going to talk about some of the fun things for some people, I guess. Motorcycles. Toys, right.
Toys that we have.
Motorcycles, RVs, off-road vehicles, all that fun stuff. So tell us about the Ride Smart program.
Well, as I mentioned before, that you can buy private coverage for your auto, but you can also do other things for your toys as well. Ride Smart covers your motorcycles primarily, but they also cover ATVs, skidoos, those sorts of things. Like an old fart like myself, I get a significant discount by buying it. I mean, the price is usually half to 2/3 of what ICBC charges on an annualized basis. So the only difference is that you have to buy the policy for a year. So if you ride your bike for 6 months out of the year, you're better off to buy a Ride Smart program policy, separate policy, because you get coverage for the whole year. So you can, if you let your insurance lapse and it's a sunny day in March, you decide you want to take the bike out, you can just slap a permit on for a day and you've still got coverage in place and not have to worry about it.
Interesting. We actually own a motorcycle in our home, and I'd never even heard of the Ride Smart program before.
Yeah. So
something to ask your broker about.
Right. So, and there's a lot of extra benefits with it. I mean, they cover, they give you $1,000 coverage on a trailer if you've got one. They cover $1,000 on your gear. So your riding suits and your helmets are covered up to $1,000. That's included, which you don't get with ICBC.
Interesting. Definitely a better way to insure your motorcycle. What about, are there any of the other program highlights with Ride Smart that we haven't covered?
Well, there's, again, the emergency roadside service, lock rekeying. So if you lose your keys, they'll pay for the locks to be rekeyed. They also have a travel protection policy, similar along the lines of what we've been talking about with the auto, where if you crash your bike and you need to be put up or transported back, that sort of thing. There's coverage included in the policy for that as well.
Discounts for anything?
They give discounts for if you're a member of a club, if you've taken driving courses. Again, things that ICBC doesn't take into consideration because they have to be very generic in terms of how they write insurance based on the requirements from the government. So everybody's treated equal, whether you're a 50-plus-year-old fart like myself or a 25-year-old. If you've been driving for 10 years, you get the same sort of discounts.
So ICBC's offering sounds more like a cut and dried sort of a master template for
right.
Everybody fits in the same box, whereas the Ride Smart program sounds a little more flexible, offering a lot more options.
Well, they underwrite the risk based on the exposure that they look at, as opposed to saying that when you get to a certain level, that's it, everybo's the same. They look at it and say, well, if you're 50 plus, we don't think you're going to be, even if you buy a fast motorcycle, we don't think you're going to be doing 80 miles an hour, in the city on it, because you're probably a little more intelligent than that 25-year-old who's, wants to get his adrenaline rush.
Kicks.
Yeah.
I'm actually glad that you bring up the topic of the fast, the rockets, as they call them. Does the type of motorcycle make a difference when you're buying insurance? Is a Harley different than the scooter or the street racers? Or basically, what impact does a bigger, faster bike have on the premiums or the costs? Or
Well, on the Ride Smart, it's based on valuation, so the CCs don't matter. Where the difference occurs on the pricing is on the basic insurance, which you buy from ICBC. So again, you buy the first $200,000 on that, and I priced it out just for interest sake. So with $1 million liability, for under 100 CCs, you're looking at $199 a year. Whereas you go up to 1,100 CCs without discounts, you're looking at $2,251.
That's a big difference.
Right. Well, because you got a lot bigger bike and a lot more power and the ability to go a lot faster and create a lot more havoc.
Okay. What about long distance traveling on your motorcycle? Driving down the coast of California or being that snowbird and making your way to Arizona for a couple of months. on the back of the motorcycle.
Not a problem. Again, the travel package is kind of a nice thing to have, because if something does happen, you've got extra coverage for that. So if you've got to be laid up or need transportation back, that sort of thing, that's covered under the travel package.
Okay. Talk a little bit about off-road vehicles, some of the toys, the ATVs and such.
Well, yeah, here in the Lower Mainland, you don't get a lot of it. I've had a few clients that have it. I mean, the problem is that it's very expensive to buy liability coverage on an ATV, and I'm amazed at how many people will, we worry about carrying $3 and $5 million on our cars, but you don't worry about it on the ATV. But, you've got these at your summer home, and you're letting your teenagers ride around, and maybe their teenage friends have come along as well. They're sitting on the back and they flip it over. You've got a liability exposure.
Yeah, it's quite common too. Is I've done the news here for several years, and I know every summer we're reporting on ATV accidents.
Somebody being paralyzed because they went over a tree trunk the wrong way and
sure, or rolled it, or went down steep embankment or whatever.
Right. So you need to think about that exposure as well. I mean, and it's not cheap to insure, but it's an exposure you need to be concerned with. Mm-hmm. And so the off-road package covers that. Again, it covers the same sorts of things. The lock rekeying and trailer coverage, et cetera, is all included in that package.
Mm-hmm. So we should talk about the RV lifestyle. I know it's something that is of great importance to our CL 650 listeners. We spend a lot of time on the road. We're of that age where we get a few months off, or we're either retired now or planning for retirement. And what are some of the essentials that we need to know when it comes to owning an RV? Before
we get into that, one other thing I just want to touch on the off-road vehicles is to bring people aware that there is new regulations that were passed recently, and the ATVs and skidoos, which again were covered under the off-road program, if you're driving across highways, you're now required to have a license plates, believe it or not. So if you're moving or you're traveling on logging roads, government logging roads, you're actually required to carry license plates, which means you have to buy your liability and coverage through ICBC as opposed to an off-road program. So again, you need to have that discussion with your broker, let him know how you're using it, when you're using it, where you're using it, to make sure you're actually getting the right coverage. So now RVs, I mean, again, those are same sort of thing. It's the coverage is available. There's travel packages were included. There's loss of use coverage in there. There's emergency emergency towing packages that are available. So it's a matter of sitting down and spending that, quote, 5 minutes talking to your broker and saying, here's what I'm doing. What do I need to do? The only issue you've got is if you've got an RV and you're parking it down in a jurisdiction like, say, Arizona, and you're leaving it there, you've got to be careful that you've got to bring it back on a regular basis at some point into Canada to cross the border, so that the insurance starts. The time clock starts all over again.
You can't leave it down there for 5 months unattended while you come home for.
You can, but if you leave it for more than that, then you got an issue, right? So then you're supposed to then you have to worry about you have to check with the jurisdiction you're in, and each state has their own regulations in terms of what you're doing. So again, you need to. You can't really have that conversation with your broker, but if you are planning something like that, you might want to talk to your broker and find out, is there certain things I should be aware of, and they may say, well, look, you need to talk to the local authorities and find out where, what requirements do they have.
Sure, and that would involve trying to look after the contents of what's inside the RV that you leave.
That too, but it's more the liability aspect, right? So, and this applies not just to RVs, this applies to your homes or motorcycles or anything else. If you've got a summer home down somewhere else and you're leaving vehicles on a permanent basis, you need to make sure you talk to the jurisdiction there to find out what their requirements are, because if they've got a requirement that says you have to insure something within 60 days and you don't, then you may be voiding your insurance up here even though you've got it down there. So again, it's you want to make sure you don't end up in that breach category.
So I think once again we can remind our listeners, when you go to purchase your new policy or renew your new policy with your broker, it's not as easy as saying, just give me the same policy I had last year, because things change all the time. Right. You're listening to Experts on Call on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton, and joining us in the studio today are the insurance experts, featuring Patrick Magnuson and Carmen Monroy from Intact Insurance, along with Andrew Tablotny of Laguerre Pelling Insurance. You can get more information online at intact.ca. And coming up next, some classic tips for the classic and vintage car collector. It's all next on CL 650.
This is Experts on Call on CL 650.